Or, a reminder for an event in an hour popped up on my lock screen. The vague title Us 3 reflected the fact that I felt calling the meeting coming up in 59 minutes a reunion would be embarrassing. It wasn't as if our parting was anything so dramatic as to warrant a reunion, and calling it a get-together with old classmates seemed cold. The three of us just happened to be born in the same year and live in the same school district in the same town. And one day when we were little, in another coincidence, we happened to meet at the park nearest our houses. Who was the one who said, "Let's play together," G or B? Now the artlessness, or I suppose fearlessness, of little boys and girls surprises me, but at some point that day we met. The three of us ended up playing together. Back then we saw each other practically every day. We went to school together, and then played for as long as time allowed in the schoolyard, at the park where we met, at one of our houses. We got along so incredibly well, but we, like so many others, stopped hanging out together because of some tiny little thing. Thinking back on it now, it was such a cute little romance. We never did patch up our relationship, but I can't talk about my childhood without mentioning those two friends. I guess there wasn't the perfect word to describe the three of us meeting after such a long time. When the Us 3 popped up on my phone, I was walking across a scramble intersection among crisscrossing streams of brightly colored umbrellas. I didn't have work that day, and the sole item on my schedule app timeline was the afternoon slot labeled Us 3. What a chill day. On the left side of the screen, the previous day's timeline was a cascade of labeled silvers and dimmed out colors. That had been a busy one. When the colors on the proof looked different from the way they had on the LCD, one of the big shots at the client company ordered a halt just before the poster was finalized. And I had to make multiple laps between our office and theirs carrying subtly adjusted copies. It's not rare to get complaints that the colors aren't what the client expected. When I was a newbie, I would retort, "It's not as if I expected this to be my future, either." In my head. But more recently I'm acclimated enough to the work that I can just start running around to take care of things. Back at the station, I finally managed to find an open coin locker. In a big city overflowing with people and things, it's hard to find empty space. Into that space, I stuffed the paper bag of ratty clothes I had been wearing when I left the house. Now I was clad in an outfit I had procured earlier in the afternoon by swinging by a few menswear shops. My plan was to show up at the meeting point as if I always wore this sort of thing. I hadn't bought street clothes in a long time. I suppose it must have been G on my mind that made me feel like trying to look good. With an awkward amount of time left before the meetup, I headed toward a building that had a shop where I could loiter. On the screen in my hand I went back in my browsing history and visited G's social media page registered under her real name. We were friends, so I could only see her icon, but that one photo with her long lashes coming down over her eyes despite her smile was enough to tell she had grown up to be pretty, and every time I saw it, I couldn't help but get a little excited. On my way to the shop, I got a call from B. He spoke quickly, saying he had been mistaken about the address he sent earlier and would send a new one, so please go there instead. It had always been B who had come up with the places we would play and the rules of our games, and he was also the organizer of this get-together. Marveling at the way his voice had dropped a couple octaves and how we were talking for the first time in over a decade, I told him I understood. By the time I got to the shop, the rain that had been falling since morning had stopped. The umbrellas that had been open over people's heads were narrowed and, inside, wrapped in translucent plastic bags. Browsing the somewhat high-class stationery the shop sold, I was remembering the notebook I'd had with a big picture of red flowers that bloomed in some other country on the cover. The pages had neither grids nor lines, and on its white pages I had drawn a manga. My only tools had been a pencil and a ruler, and I barely managed to use any perspective. But it was crammed full of my sense of humor, and I'll never forget how nervous I was the moment I handed it to G and B when, after waiting in on us for a little while, they laughed. I was relieved to my very core and so happy I was shaken. Since growing distant from them, I had continued to draw in pursuit of that trembling joy. But 2 years ago, I gave up. I wasn't going to gain any more readers. When I thought about it, G and B were my old friends, as well as my first readers, the ones who got me started dreaming. When I left the shop, a bag with a pen and notebook inside hung from my non-umbrella hand. I suddenly had the thought to doodle some of my old characters and show them. I was sure they would laugh. The mix of nerves and expectations of my childhood came back to me. By the time I was on my way to the new meeting place, the evening light was beginning to shine on the no longer rainy city. When I turned onto a crowded main street, I got a face full of sun, and it was so bright I had to squint. I felt a languid warmth on the front of my body. Once my eyes adjusted to the light, the streetscape was there tinted faint orange before me, and I could see the curve of a rainbow in the rectangles of faraway sky cut out between the buildings. The three of us once saw a rainbow together. It had suddenly started to rain, so we huddled beneath some playground equipment for shelter. When we came out afterward, there was a huge arch hanging in the distance, its legs reaching all the way to the ground. We could see the whole thing. I vaguely remember B explaining the science behind why rainbows have 7 colors. A vivid gradation described in refracted light. I almost started thinking about work. I bet it'd be hard to represent with ink. But instead I switched perspectives to something that would psych me up. It's a celebration of our reunion, and turned onto a side street. G? My position on the map was blinking. I copy-pasted the address B had sent. 1 transfer, and it'll take about 60 minutes. That's farther away than I expected. When I reached my station, I bought a bottle of the milk tea I've been hooked on lately from a vending machine and boarded the train departing 1 minute later. The blinking dot on the map started zooming along. My place is bigger, but it sucks to be so far from Tokyo Zero lights. So I'm the only one who's farther away now. Well, I don't need any sympathy. I feel like I can do whatever I want. The public housing and baseball diamonds gave way to a big river and the highway. Before long, the train I was on went underground. I opened the chat group I had with our NG and went up to the beginning of the combo, my nail tapping as I scrolled. Hey, been a while. It's B. I got a new phone and you two popped up. Do you remember me? Wow. B. It's been forever. I was surprised to see such a nostalgic chat group. Oh? I'm glad you didn't forget me. LOL. Are you all in Tokyo? Why don't we meet up? LOL, it's been so long. That's sudden. LOL. We meet again, after 15 years. LOL. Dramatic. Yeah, I wanna see you guys. Looking at it like this, you with the green bubbles, aren't your responses a bit short? That was just what happened when the unexpected message got me all excited and I replied that instant. I've never been very good at expressing myself in letters or emails, anything using writing. I really meant it when I said, I wanna see you guys, so I hope that part, at least, got through. I finally got to Tokyo Station for my transfer. I hid my face and took a snap of the rest of my body reflected in the bathroom's mirror. I have a pretty good collection of dresses and skirts, but that day I went for pants. I always wore pants when I hung out with those two. Not that we were planning on climbing trees or getting otherwise athletic this time. IMG0196. I uploaded the picture to my story without any words. The usual suspects saw it right away and reacted with emoji. Good. No drama on the timeline today. So I have this ultra-touching meetup today. First time seeing these two boys I used to play with when I was little in like 15 years. 2 likes. B was calling me. A bit surprised. I cancelled the call since I was in the train and opened a separate chat with him. Missed call. Sorry. I'm in the train. NP. Location data. I sent you the wrong place. Sorry. I guess it was their old address. LOL. It's not that far away, but this is the spot. Gotcha. I should get there exactly on time. I replied quickly and went back to the list of chats where I noticed I had an unread message in another private chat. So the old classmates you're meeting today are two guys? Yep. They must have liked you. LOL. Nah. LOL. We're just friends. Just friends. That was the truth. We were totally different, but we took turns doing the stuff each of us liked, and I have some memories of fun times with them. I mean, I remember my parents getting mad at me for coming home after the sun set. We had been so into what we were doing that we lost track of time, so we must have gotten along really well back then. The fact that we could become so close just living in the same building, going to the same school, and walking home the same way is somehow so innocent. I considered tweeting about it but couldn't find the right words, so I gave up. Thinking back, I have the feeling those were the days that I had the purest sense of friendship of my life so far. It's not as if we cut each other off after a big fight or anything. We each just got busy with friends who were more like us. BA and I couldn't keep up with ours comments about the books and manga he liked. We had more days with basketball practice, and I was having fun trading stickers and decorating my planner with my girlfriends. We were just friends with different hobbies. I hope today will be innocent fun like it was back then. Huh, it was raining in Tokyo? I didn't bring an umbrella, but I guess I'm safe. One like. I panicked seeing raindrops on the window, but when I looked down on the street from the platform, no one had their umbrellas up anymore. Phew. I don't mean to brag, but I tend to be lucky in cases like these, when I don't want to lose at rock, paper, scissors, or when I think I can win at something. So I'm sure the recent decision I made was the right one, too. Just as I looked up from copy-pasting the new address and figuring out which exit was closest, I saw it and pointed my camera without even thinking. A rainbow. It's so pretty. Total Heart Cleanse TT. IMG01978 likes. While I was at it, I tapped the icon with a double-digit notification badge for the first time that day. Announcement: I have some personal news. I'd like to read more. 267 likes. Unlike my casual posts, the formal announcement made under my real name got me lots of hearts. Looking closer, I saw B had liked it, too. I replied to all the congrats with a thanks. Since making that post, honestly, I had been anxious that people were seeing me differently, or like, I'd even felt like I was changing into someone else. So I wasn't sure if thanks was the correct response. But I'm grateful for their celebration, so I guess it's fine. It hit me again how hard it is to convey things with words. Leaving the ticket gate, I went back to the chat to add more bubbles. Coming home tonight. Yeah, I'll be back. Upping again later. KK. Have fun. What will the guys call me when we meet? I hope they use the same name they did back then. Lately I've only been thinking about the future, so at least for today I'd like to steep in memories of more carefree times. As I set off walking, I sent a selfie of me with a rainbow to the group chat. IMG0198. B? An hour before meeting up with old friends I hadn't seen in over 10 years, I was already near the meeting place sitting outside at a cafe. The one I was talking to via my wireless headphones was a close friend of about 2 years, and the topic was the usual drinking invite. Today I can't. I'm meeting old classmates today. Huh? 3 of us. The number of people doesn't matter. Since I was making the call hands-free, anyone who saw me might have thought I was a weirdo talking to myself. My friend was surprised that one of the people is a girl. Tomorrow? You really have nothing going on, huh? But you're gonna fail again next year if you keep that up. No, I'm gonna study hard tomorrow, so I'll be fine. Sure thing. Bye. When I hung up, the music that had stopped during the call automatically started playing again. I was listening to the first album I ever bought with my own money. I seem to remember having felt a little more grown up for buying a CD instead of game cartridge or trading cards. Listening to the songs from my memories via streaming audio reminded me of the times I had listened to them on a CD player. And I really felt like those were the days, whether academics or sports. If I put in the effort, I could get better results than anyone. I had more confidence back then, and when the three of us were walking together, I'd be walking a half step ahead without even realizing. That's the type of guy I was. It was the shining golden age before the frog learned about the great ocean. My headphones canceled the noise, so I hadn't realized. But by the time the album finished, the rain had stopped. When I took my headphones off, the sounds of the city that had been off in the distance closed in again. The place I'm meeting them is near here, and I've been there before with my buddy who failed last year's test with me, so it's probably fine to chill here a bit longer. But then I remembered something. Hello. Or, hey, it's been a long time. Are you already on your way? Oh, good. No. So, the link I sent is actually to the wrong address. I guess they moved. They did once before, but now they've gone and done it again. The new address is really close to the old one, though. I'll send the correct address in a minute. Yeah, it'll be fun to catch up. Sure thing. See you later. Was my voice clearly louder than when I was talking with my other friend? Well, whatever. I called G right away, but apparently she was still in the train. After sending them both a new address, I drained the last of my coffee, put the study guide I had laid open on the table like a lucky charm into my bag, and headed out onto the damp street. A little while later, my friend was calling me again. I wondered what he could possibly want, but answered anyhow. Hello. Huh? Oh? Yeah. It's G? Wow. So you're connected. Huh? I'll mention you, then. He had seen a post on his timeline that matched what I told him and thought maybe it was the same get-together. Small world. Yeah. Huh? The announcement? Yeah. I know about that. I'm friends with her on that account, so I liked it, too. But I might not know. At the time, at least. I think I liked G, that's why he got so mad. Even though it wasn't like him. When she showed his notebook to other girls. But G showed it to them because she thought it was interesting. Arguments between kids are liable to be triggered by goodwill. And sometimes something so trivial ends the friendship. Before I knew it, I was telling my friend about Ars manga. And the girl was definitely modeled on G. Huh? Yeah, there was a guy like me, too. A strong, quick-witted guy. Yeah, I was good at school and sports. I was even class rep, yeah. I was way different back then. But wow, this guy is either just really interested in other people or he has way too much time on his hands. It's actually partly my fault that R and G missed their chance to make up. He drew a chapter where the characters made up, but it got confiscated because I was reading it during class. So I want to apologize for that and ask how it ended. It's possible I was putting on airs, telling him all this. Maybe all I really wanted was to go back to the time when those two looked up to me, even just for a day. Yeah, if R has his hopes up, I suppose I'll have to finesse things. If he's shocked when he finds out, I'll invite him out after. Just the two of us. We're not kids anymore, so we can stay out all night. Huh? Shut up. Of course I wanna act cool in front of them. I'm fine. I'll definitely pass next year. I'm more worried about you. Okay, later. When I hung up, I felt weirdly self-conscious in a way I hadn't a moment ago. Why? I guess it was like I had been made to say what I really felt, even though I had been trying not to even notice the feeling. Glancing up, I saw it, and I decided to say it aloud to distract my attention from my embarrassment at myself. Oh, a rainbow. Now I didn't have my wireless headphones on. I was actually just talking to myself. Come to think of it, one time I proudly told R and G how rainbows work, but my explanation was actually slightly wrong. I walked a little farther, and the meeting spot came into view. Out front, a nicely dressed guy was looking back and forth between his phone and the sign. I was still a ways away from where he was standing, but I took a breath, waved a hand, and called out to him. Hey, it's been so long. Light. It's already been a year since the three of them reunited. How did their meetup go that day? Judging from the outcome, it didn't go the way any of them had expected. When B called out to him, R straightened up from peering at the sign. Surprisingly, R was a slender 10 centimeters taller than B. Wow. Hey, it's been so long. Unable to conceal his surprise at their height relationship being reversed, he repeated himself in a nearly cracking voice as R approached. Hey, B. Long time no see. Is this the place? It's so fancy. Oh? Yeah. Nice, right? Sorry, I made a mistake with the address. No worries. Thanks for planning everything. Oh? That's G, isn't it? R noticed G coming toward the man waving behind B, and he immediately saw the sparkle on her left ring finger in the evening light and understood everything. Sorry, were you meeting long? Wow. You guys are so grown up. It's been so long. R and B were still working on the twin shocks of their heights and the ring, so they both failed to give G a friendly greeting. Huh? What's wrong? Did I do something weird? A brief silence. In the westering light, out front of a fancy restaurant tucked away off the main street, the three friends who managed to meet again after more than 10 years stood without saying a word. The few moments during which the groans of the city were faintly audible went by at a slower pace than normal. After that, almost simultaneously, all three of them cracked up. As if a dam had broken, they began to laugh out loud. What first was just the noise of their exhalations gradually turned into full-blown laughter. Ah ha ha! The mixture of their three voices washed over the previously silent street. Huh? So what? No, it's not that. Aura's just so huge. Me. I mean, of course I'm taller. None of them thought their first meeting in over a decade would be so anticlimactic. The image they'd had in mind was much more dramatic, filled with significance, so the gag felt silly and they left for a while in the evening sun. Okay. To meeting up again. Cheers. The glasses bumped, and the clink echoed slightly. Perhaps the goofy way they had gathered outside Banoki Ice? Their mini-class reunion got off to a smooth start, as if they had seen each other a max of only a few weeks ago. Wasn't the home ec room on the second floor? No, the first. I remember it faced the courtyard. Maybe I'm mixing it up with junior high. Too. The topics that got them going were trivial memories, trying to remember the details of their elementary school's layout. Judging the songs selected for the lunchtime PA broadcasts from the perspective of their current musical tastes, lining up the destinations of their social studies field trips in chronological order. Actually, most of the expectations they had come with were misfires. Their faces weren't like this before, but you improved a ton. This is no good. I don't suck anymore. Once some of the plates had been cleared, R spread out the notebook he had bought and tried drawing some of his old manga characters, but no one was really feeling it. Apparently it's futile for an adult to try to recapture the uniqueness of their childhood drawings. You got it back. I always felt so bad about that. B expressed his shock as he doled out slices of chicken off the hot plate. He always thought it had been his fault the notebook had been confiscated, but it turned out the teacher had returned it to her after the fact. Didn't we fight about it? Didn't we? She showed it to some girls in class without asking. Oh? Yeah. I remember that, but you apologized that same day. Still, thinking back now, that was an awful thing to do. Sorry, again. As for the end of the story that B had been wondering about, R confessed that the plot had gotten too complicated, so he gave up on finishing it. In the flow of their conversation, the question of how they had fallen out of touch came up. But from the sound of it, R and G had just as much of a misunderstanding as B did when it came to the episodes they each identified as the turning point. R had believed a baseless rumor that G was getting along well with a boy in another class, and G had sensed a distance forming between her and B when their class changed and they started their club activities. But upon talking through the issues, the other two pointed out which parts weren't the case, and it became clear that their beliefs had been one-sided. So then why did we start playing together? I guess it wasn't any one thing. Seems like we just went in different directions. What the heck? How could our friendship end just like that? Wow, you really hung up on this. Huh. How many years? I was hung up for more than 10 years over basically nothing. But I'm glad I learned the truth today. Planning this was a good idea, but we met up again. So it's not as if it really even ended. By the time their stomachs were full of seasonal ingredients cooked into rice in a clay pot and an amount of alcohol that easily made the all-you-can-drink price worth it, the three of them had come to the conclusion that there hadn't really been a reason they grew estranged. When all that was left was the creative palate cleanser of a dessert on its way, I suddenly asked about the ring on G's left hand. By the way, G, where'd you meet your guy? Come to think of it, neither R nor B were calling G by her old nickname. Huh? You're gonna make me talk about that now. I mean, to keep today strictly memories. How many times had G had to tell this story lately? With the practice structure, she deftly recounted how they had gotten to know each other. R listened with a bigger smile than usual, chiming in here and there with little comments he must have learned as an adult. Okay, you office workers have off tomorrow, right? What are you guys doing after this? B was about to wrap their dinner up, and the atmosphere was such that they would split up after that. But R suddenly said, you know, G, I really liked you back in the day. The timing caught them so off guard that G and B were speechless, and it was as if time at the table had stopped. Unconcerned, R continued smoothly, even coolly revealing the ultra-top class secret that he had been partway through writing a love letter. That was when time finally started back up for G and B. Are you seriously bringing this up now? What? Wait a sec. I had no idea. Oh? Come on. It was so obvious. Phew. I said it. Glad I got that off my chest. Without that development, the after party would have ended up just the two men, as B had imagined. But with this flurry of activity right as they were about to part, the night's energy was reset. It couldn't end now. The trio moved on with all its members and the same voltage to a different venue. This way. Hurry up. The entertainment district was so brightly lit it was hard to believe it was night, and G ran down the street like a little girl. She was in such a good mood. R&B weaved between people heading to the station, taking care not to lose sight of her. Didn't something like this happen at a summer festival once? Yeah. I was just remembering the same thing. While the first stop of the night had been the creative, elaborate cuisine of a fancy restaurant off the beaten path, the second stop was a more down-to-earth place featuring cheap bottles of wine and dishes with more recognizable names. At the second place, they talked about not only their memories, as they filled each other's wine glasses, but their current lives, too. Work, marriage, dreams they hoped to realize. Partway through, the topic of why we had R and G's contact info came up, but similar to the reason they had fallen out of touch, there was no clear answer. Didn't we trade contact info in high school? Or we ran into each other and did the infrared thing? Whoa, that's a blast from the past. But I guess we must have? I do have your number. I probably showed up because I'm friends with you on here. Oh? Or I just sent you a friend request. It was getting so late that they practically forgot it had still been light out when they met up. Even when the date was about to change, they were still together. The clatter of pins being scattered by a heavy ball echoed out every so often at the bowling alley that was open late. This one night has cost more than we spent during our entire time as kids. Well, the only money we used back then was for cheap treats or temple festival stalls. Okay, we're registered. Check out the names. Back when they had been close, the only money they'd had was their little allowances, so they had never really done anything together that cost money, was something they realized at the end of their wine. So before even another hour had passed, they were making it happen. The three of them were like kids who lost track of time playing, but their parents wouldn't scold them if they didn't go home. B's playful personality meant they were registered on the scoreboard as their old nicknames. The three of them began their game in the bluishly lit alley just as the date changed over. Everyone had a good time, because he steadily racked up points, R who threw consecutive gutter balls with a bizarre form, and G who scored miracle strikes at the end to come back and win it. They had expected it to be a day of emotional memories. But it didn't stop there. After bowling, it was darts, then billiards, then video games, every floor of the entertainment center. They enjoyed their innocent fun as if trying to make up for a blank decade, at times doubling up in laughter. Oh hey, you used to like this song, right, B? After playing the heck out of all the major attractions, they were taking a breather on the arcade floor. Even then, they got riled up, feeding tons of change into the machines. When they finally exited the dome filled with the clamor of the cabinets and could hear each other talk again, R noticed the music playing was a song by an artist B used to like. It was a pretty niche track to most people, and the rental stores around town often didn't stock the disc, so it was a surprise to hear it playing at a place like this. B had bought it at a shop in the next neighborhood over and practically forced R and G to borrow it, so when they heard the song it was like they had been transported back to those days. When it was almost time for the first trains of the day to start running, the entertainment center abruptly began to quiet down, as if a spell had been broken, and when the three of them walked outside, it was already starting to get light out. Whether because they had managed to talk about everything they had saved up all these years in one night, or because they were exhausted from playing so hard like little kids, no one had much to say as they headed toward the station. Whenever someone said anything, the other two replied with a vague chuckle. As they walked along, there were several rounds of that. They came upon a pedestrian bridge, and as they were crossing, they all felt a faint warmth on one cheek and turned to look. Oh? The Sunday, which one of them said it? The sun, which had been orange in the west at the moment of their reunion, had finished shining on the opposite side of the earth and peeked over the man-made horizon on the east side of town. At that moment, the three of them were seeing the very same light. It was different from the rainbow they had seen from their respective positions before they met up the previous day. It seemed like the point where B would say something like, "Do you know I sunlight appears white?" But they had already met again. No words were necessary. That light contained all the colors people are able to see. That's why it was so bright and dazzling. The three of them stood still for a little while watching the light announcing the new day. A year later, the circumstances the three find themselves in are not so different. Each of them is moving their life forward bit by bit. If anything is different, it's that the three of them continue to meet up every now and then. Every couple months or so, one of them will suddenly message the group that was created that day. For any casual reason, work calmed down for the moment. They were running an errand nearby, or they found a good restaurant. Their story began again that day. Connections once made never disappear. You might meet someone you thought you would never see again in the unlikeliest of places. When the bonds that nearly came undone are retied even stronger, the paused story starts again. In the future, they'll become such good friends that they forget they ever had a reunion, and before they know it, they'll fall out of touch again. But that's totally fine. The story woven out of connections between people never ends, and it will never disappear. As we live our lives, we grow closer and further apart in waves, meeting all sorts of different people. It's not clear if any of them remember that it's been exactly a year since they reunited, but they have plans to hang out again somewhere in town. Of course, the only time they stayed out the entire night was a year ago. These days, when they're going their separate ways before the date changes, they always make sure to say, "Chat more tomorrow."